Today we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood things in the building industry that I've encountered over my many years of business coaching and helping builders all over the country. Every time I sit in a room full of builders and talk about this subject, and that subject is builders margin, I find 90% of the room have a complete misunderstanding of this subject, and yet it's such a critical thing for a business owner in the building industry to completely have sorted out. So today I'm just going to address some of the misunderstandings and try and give you the tools that you need to properly understand and use builders margin. So I'm not going to tell you today what the correct margin is. I have some opinions on that, and each business is quite unique, and I'd be very happy to share with you what I believe the correct margin should be for your business. However, today we're going to use what's widely recognised as an industry standard, and that's 20%. So you'll see a lot of industry associations, for the example, the HIA will use 20% builder's margin as their default margin. So for the purposes of our explanation today, we're going to use 20%, rightly or wrongly. For the ease of the calculations and to help you know whatever margin you choose for your business, at least you're arriving at the right number. Now let me start by explaining a couple of things. The word margin has a very distinct meaning in the accounting world. So I'm an accountant, I'm also a builder, so when I use the word builder's margin means something very specifically to an accountant. It doesn't necessarily mean that to your client or to yourself or to others that look at that word, but in the accounting world, margin means something very specific. The other word that means something very specific is markup. So today we're really contrasting margin and markup as two very different things. So let me use, for the purpose of our example, a $100,000 figure. So as a builder, you have costs in your business. Suppliers and subcontractors are your main costs. Suppliers plus subcontractors. So, and those subcontractors, for some of you, that might be direct employed labour. But the point is, you have material input costs and you have labour input costs. So let's imagine that you combine these two costs, and the total is $100,000. An imaginary figure, but useful to determine this. Now, if you say, okay, I would like to run my business with a 20% margin. Now, if I say that to you and say, okay, this is my cost, what am I charging my customer? Let's think about the calculation you're doing here. Now, at this point, I want you to pick up your calculator, because this is a very real challenge, and I want you to understand what you're doing on the calculator and what the impacts are on your business. So take the $100,000 and put that into your calculator, and then put on your 20% margin. Now at this point, most builders will go, okay, 100,000 plus 20%, or another thing I see builders do is times 1.2 will give me a number. And of course, that number is $120,000. If you've done the calculation and you've arrived at $120,000, join the club. Most builders are doing that, okay? No shame in that. That's exactly what the majority of industry is doing. The problem with that is it's wrong. Why is it wrong? The difference between 120 and 100,000, no genius is required to determine that, $20,000. Now, margin is a comparison between your margin here and your turnover, which is 120. Now, if $20,000 compared with $120,000, is that 20%? No, of course it's not. 20 compared with your costs, 20,000 compared with your costs of $100,000 is 20%. 20 compared with 120 is, of course, not 20%. So if you know how to do that calculation, you'll discover, in fact, that is 16.6%. So most builders who think they're trying to achieve a 20% margin do this calculation, and at the end of the year find their business is in fact achieving roughly 15 or 16% and wondering where their margin is disappearing to. Usually it's just the calculation is wrong. Now, if you're listening to this and saying, well, Glenn, does it really matter? I'm charging as much as the market will bear in my community or my marketplace, 20% margin, 16% margin. I couldn't charge more if I wanted to. I'm hearing that, fair enough. That's a whole separate conversation. But where I want you to understand this is important is with your variations or your cost plus contracts. If you're getting this wrong, this margin calculation, for your 20, 30, 40, 50 years as a builder in the industry, if you're getting this wrong, you're leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table every year just simply with variation calculations, let alone your overall cost of building. So please understand that this is critically important for your sustainability as a builder, and also just worthwhile to understand if you've got to explain it to a client how you've arrived at a given number related to a variation or a cost plus contract. So if you're wondering, how do I actually do the calculation correctly? Starting again with the $100,000, instead of adding 20% or timesing what by 1.2, what we've actually got to do is a division. So the easiest way in our example is $100,000 divided by 0.8 will give us the answer we're looking for. And in fact, that is $125,000 would be the correct number we charge to the client, plus GST, of course. So GST is a separate issue, but $125,000 plus GST would be what we would charge the client if in fact we're looking for a 20% builder's margin. Now, I discovered this fact very early in my career as a builder, and we wrote software to help our clients deal with this correctly. So our clients don't have to sort of manually work this out each time. When they're calculating variations, they put their costs in and the software gives them the correct answer without the need to understand the math behind it. But if that's a help to you, and I'm sure it will be, then you can now understand how that's calculated. This number here is simply 1 minus the margin I want. We'll call the margin X, expressed as a decimal point. So in this case, 1 minus 0.2, 0.2 being 20% expressed as a decimal gives me the 0.8. So you can apply that to any margin you like and get the same result here. I hope that's a help to you. Margin is one of the things that can make or break a builder's business, and I'm sure if you get this right, you're on the path to a sustainable and successful building business.